Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. Rain pounded against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Montgomery and Reed law offices, each drop echoing through the deserted corridor like a distant warning. It was nearly midnight, and yet the building's top floor remained illuminated by long rows of fluorescent lights, as if refusing to surrender to the storm outside. Camille Lawson stood alone in the main conference room, shoulders stiff, eyes narrowed in concentration on the proposal spread out before her. She had only a few hours to finalize it. Tomorrow morning, she'd be pitching her plan to land the firm's biggest fish, Mr. Randall Wellington, a high-profile, notoriously elusive client. Lightning flashed, illuminating Camille's reflection in the glass walls. Dressed in a crisp gray blazer, she tapped her pen anxiously on the table. A persistent headache gnawed at her temples. "I can't afford a single mistake," she reminded herself. The stress was so thick it almost felt tangible. Suddenly, the heavy door swung open. Sean Mitchell stepped inside wearing a self-assured grin. The overhead lights flickered against his charcoal suit, and in that moment, he looked like a triumphant boxer entering a ring. He shut the door behind him, trapping them both in the electric tension. "Working late as always, I see," Sean said, his voice smooth yet laced with challenge. "Cracking the puzzle on how to win Wellington's heart, or still figuring out what you're missing?" Camille's jaw clenched. The memory of losing a key client to Sean only a few months back was still fresh and humiliating. "I don't recall inviting you in," she replied, keeping her tone cold. "I've got this under control. Why don't you go home?" He chuckled, stepping toward the conference table. "Oh, I'm sure you're well prepared. You always are. But Wellington's not like the others, Camille. He's a little more adventurous. He might need a lawyer who can play a bit loose with the rules. He waved a hand at her neatly arranged files. "Seem 2 Bythe book." The remark hit like a punch to the gut. Sean was implying that her professionalism was a handicap. Camille took a breath, wrestling the urge to toss her binder at him. Lightning crackled outside, illuminating the tension etched on her face. "At least my approach doesn't involve sweet-talking every paralegal in the firm," she retorted, voice taut. "If you think charm alone will reel Wellington in, be my guest. I'll be over here actually practicing law." Sean's grin never wavered. He leaned forward, hands braced on the table. "No need to get defensive. I only came to remind you that Brett Wilson expects our final proposals on his desk by 7. One of us will walk into that meeting a winner, and I'd hate to see you." He paused, eyes raking over her with a subtle hint of something beyond rivalry, disappointed. Before Camille could fire back, her cell phone buzzed loudly. She frowned at the screen. Evan. A wave of guilt rippled through her. She hadn't spoken to her husband all day. Letting out a frustrated sigh, she stepped away from Sean's earshot, though in a glass-walled room, privacy was a myth. "Evan," she said, voice subdued. "It's late. Everything okay?" On the other end, rain static hissed along with Evan's tired tone. I just got another rejection email. Same old story, they like the concept, but don't think my manuscript fits their current plans." He exhaled shakily. "I was hoping you could—" Camille rubbed her forehead, stress piling onto stress. "Evan, I'm in the middle of something huge. I can't talk right now." A streak of lightning slashed across the skyline, as if punctuating her impatience. "You can't keep clinging to these fantasy novels. You need to figure out something else. Something real." Silence on the line, heavy and accusatory. Finally, Evan spoke, his voice small. "All right. Sorry for interrupting." The call ended with a soft click, leaving Camille's stomach twisted with guilt. She turned around to find Sean still standing there, eyebrows raised. She ignored his inquisitive stare and stuffed her phone away, focusing on her notes to mask the sudden tremor in her hands. "Personal stuff?" Sean asked, feigning casual interest. "You look a bit rattled." Camille shot him a glare. "I'm fine." Inside, she knew she was anything but. The pressure from her failing marriage, the weight of tomorrow's pitch, her entire life felt like it was teetering on a wire above an unrelenting storm. Sean offered a short, mocking salute. "I'll leave you to it. Don't stay up too late, Camille. Wouldn't want you yawning in front of Mr. Wellington." He stepped out into the hallway, and the door clicked shut behind him. Only the drumming rain and the flickering lights kept Camille company now. She leaned against the glass, gazing at the city lights blurred by the downpour. Tomorrow could make or break her career, and tonight she'd just undercut her own husband's dreams. Lightning flashed once more, and she caught her weary reflection eyes brimming with anxiety. She pressed her forehead against the cool window pane, whispering a silent prayer that the storm in her life would somehow subside. Little did she know, it had only just begun. Sunrise did little to chase away the gloom of the previous night's storm. Though the rain had eased up, thick gray clouds still swallowed most of the morning light. Camille stepped into the 17th floor lobby of Montgomery and Reed, coffee in hand, shoulders rigid. She was running on less than 4 hours of sleep and a whole lot of nerves. Inside the sprawling conference room, people milled around in business attire, exchanging subdued greetings. Brett Wilson, the firm's senior partner with a keen eye for top billers, stood near the head of the table. He wore a calm expression that belied his razor-sharp judgments. Caleb and Spencer, 2 junior associates, sorted through binders at one end, while Nina Camille's paralegal adjusted a projector at the other. Sean strolled in moments later, wearing that same smug half-smile. He offered nods to some of the associates and winked at Lauren, the firm's receptionist-turned-executive assistant, who scurried around with a tray of documents. Camille's teeth ground together at the sight. He's definitely in his element. Brett cleared his throat, calling everyone to attention. "All right, folks, let's settle. We're here to discuss final strategies for tomorrow's presentation to Mr. Randall Wellington. I trust you've all worked hard?" His gaze flicked from Sean to Camille, a telling spark dancing in his eyes. Camille was first to speak. She outlined a concise plan that hinged on detailed compliance guidelines, risk assessments, and strong negotiation stances. Every point was backed by bulletproof references. She had spent half the night double-checking them. It was her armor, the best she could muster. Sean let out a light chuckle once she finished. "Impressive thoroughness," he remarked, leaning forward as though confiding a secret to Brett. "But if I may, Mr. Wellington is known to be flexible. He might respond better to a more dynamic approach, with fewer rigid frameworks. Clients like him often want a lawyer who isn't afraid to, let's say, take a creative route." Camille's pulse thudded. Was Sean implying she was too straight-laced? Her mind flashed back to last night's confrontation. Legal strategies should be robust, not creative to the point of questionable ethics, she said, lifting her chin. "I'm confident Mr. Wellington prefers a stable, predictable representation, especially given his public scrutiny." Brett, arms crossed, looked between them. "I appreciate both perspectives. Sean, share your approach." With dramatic flair, Sean clicked a remote, and a slideshow appeared on the projector. Bold headings, phrases like aggressive expansion, tactical settlements, and brand rehabilitation. He spoke about leveraging media angles, offering behind-the-scenes crisis management, even referencing a personal contact in an influential lobbying group. Camille glanced at Nina, who whispered, "He's playing to Wellington's vanity-smart move." Camille's stomach churned. She had never seen Sean be so detailed. It was unsettling how prepared and cunning he was. A thoughtful hum escaped Brett's lips. "We'll finalize tomorrow's schedule by noon." "Both proposals are noteworthy," he said, giving a slight nod at Sean. "Though I sense one of you might adapt better to Wellington's unpredictable style." The subtext hit Camille like a cold slap. Brett was leaning toward Sean. She couldn't let it rattle her outward composure. "I'll refine my pitch before the final review," she said firmly, refusing to cede ground. Brett dismissed the room, but as Camille gathered her papers, he stopped her. "Camille, a moment?" Her heart pounded. "Yes, Mr. Wilson?" He lowered his voice. "I know your style is meticulous, and I respect that. But this client, in particular, might require a more hands-on approach. I just don't want you to lose an opportunity because you're following the rulebook too closely." She forced a polite smile. "Understood, sir. I'll keep that in mind." Sean lingered in the doorway, listening with shameless curiosity before walking away. Camille wanted nothing more than to wipe that self-satisfied smirk off his face. She gave Brett a crisp nod and rushed out, her mind already spinning with ways to adapt her pitch. In the hallway, Nina caught up. "Camille, you okay?" She looked concerned. "You seem tense." Camille sighed, hugging her files tight. "I'll be fine. We have less than 24 hours to finalize everything. Let's get to work." "And I'd better not fail," she thought grimly. The distant rumble of thunder outside felt like an echo of her internal dread. That evening, Camille stepped into her townhouse and was immediately greeted by the scent of freshly cooked pasta sauce. She paused in the foyer, adjusting to the calm domestic hush so different from the buzzing tension at the firm. Evan appeared from the kitchen doorway, wearing a faded blue t-shirt and an apron speckled with tomato sauce. He offered a tentative smile. "I made dinner. You must be starved." Camille set her briefcase down and exhaled. She was hungry, but exhaustion dripped off her like sweat. "Thanks," she managed, slipping out of her heels. "I need a minute to decompress." He nodded, stepping aside politely. "Of course. The sauce is simmering, so there's time." She walked into the living room, slumping onto the couch. For a moment, the silence pressed in. She noticed scattered manuscripts on the coffee table, Evan's notes, outlines, half-printed pages. They were a reminder of the phone call she'd ended so abruptly last night. Part of her wanted to ask how he was doing, but the day's frustrations lingered like a bitter aftertaste. Evan entered with 2 plates of spaghetti. "I figured we could eat in here," he said softly, placing 1 plate in front of her. I tried something new. Basil and a bit of red pepper flakes." She nodded and took a forkful. It tasted good enough, but her mind was already racing through tomorrow's pitch. The two of them ate in near silence. I should say something, Camille thought. Anything. But words caught in her throat. Finally, Evan cleared his throat. "I wanted you to know I've been working on a new draft. It's more contemporary, less fantasy. I thought maybe that's what publishers might want." Camille forced her gaze to meet his. "So, you're changing genres?" He shrugged, an uncertain flicker in his eyes. "Yeah, sort of. I wanted to see if it helps, but I'd really like your opinion." "You have an eye for detail." He glanced at her half-eaten dinner. "Maybe after we finish." Her plate felt heavier than it was. "Evan, I'm swamped with a major client presentation tomorrow. Honestly, I can't do any reading tonight." His shoulders fell. "Right, I understand." He attempted a small smile. "We can do it later this week." "I don't know when I'll have the time," she snapped, a hint of irritation creeping in. "You see how much pressure I'm under at Montgomery and Reed. This isn't the best moment." Evan set his fork down. The disappointment in his eyes was palpable. "You don't have to bite my head off, Camille. I get it, you're busy, but you're not the only one dealing with setbacks." She bristled. The day's tension threatened to spill over. "Look, your situation is different. Writing is your passion, but it's not exactly supporting us, is it? I'm the one carrying the financial load." The word slipped out sharper than intended, slicing the peaceful facade between them. Evan inhaled, pain flickering across his face. "You think I like that? You think I don't notice every time you pay for groceries or fix the car? I'm trying, Camille. Maybe not the way you want, but I'm still trying." Her anger flared, fueled by the day's humiliations. "Well, try harder," she whispered. Silence. The emotional gulf between them yawned wider. At length, Evan stood, collecting their plates. "I'll clean up." "Fine," Camille muttered. She watched him retreat into the kitchen, shoulders slumped, and wondered when exactly they'd begun talking to each other like wary strangers. She rubbed her temples, feeling a headache blossom. Tomorrow's pitch with Wellington, Sean's arrogant face, Brett's hint that she needed to break rules, everything weighed on her. And now, at home, she felt no relief, just more pressure. One thought kept echoing in her mind as she stared at the stack of manuscripts on the coffee table. How did we get here? Late the next morning, Camille found herself sitting in a cozy, softly lit office that contrasted sharply with the sterile boardrooms at Montgomery and Reed. The walls were lined with shelves of psychology books and potted plants. A small fountain gurgled in the corner, filling the space with a gentle, calming trickle. She glanced around, noting the plush armchairs and the scattered abstract paintings. This doesn't feel anything like a law firm, Camille thought. Maybe that's a good thing. Miss Lawson? A warm voice drew her attention. Dr. Cassandra Carter, a tall woman with curly, dark hair, slipped into the seat across from Camille. Kristen told me a bit about your situation. Work stress, tension at home. I'm here to listen. Why don't you start by telling me what's been weighing on you most? Camille hesitated. She wasn't used to discussing personal struggles with strangers, but Kristen, her old college friend, had insisted that Dr. Carter was the best in town for dealing with high achievers under pressure. My job is incredibly demanding, she began, choosing each word carefully. I'm up for a big client pitch tomorrow, and it's a lot. There's a colleague, Sean, he and I are basically in a head-to-head competition. Dr. Carter nodded thoughtfully. That sounds stressful, especially if this competition is intense. Camille let out a soft snort. You could say that. He's cunning, and he's got the attention of my boss, Brett Wilson. She paused, crossing her legs. I've always been thorough, organized by the book, they say. But apparently that might not be what this particular client wants. And how does that make you feel? Dr. Carter asked gently. Camille's jaw tightened. I feel cornered, like if I stick to my principles, I'll lose out. But if I start bending rules, I'm no better than... She stopped, shrugging. You get the idea. Dr. Carter let the silence stretch a moment. Then she leaned forward. What about your personal life? Kristen mentioned you've been having some issues at home? Camille's heart gave a small, uncomfortable lurch. She wasn't sure how to phrase that. She opted for a half-truth. My husband, Evan, is. He's a writer, but it's been slow going for him. We argue a lot these days. Money's tight. I'm working crazy hours, and it's like we're on different planets. She didn't mention the harsh words she'd used last night, or how her resentment sometimes felt like a wildfire blazing in her chest. Too much, too soon, she told herself. Baby steps. Dr. Carter nodded again, her voice soft but not pitying. I see. So you're carrying your professional burdens home and your marital burdens into the office. That's a lot on one plate, Camille. Something in Camille's chest clenched at the gentle understanding. She let out a slow breath. Honestly, I'm not sure how much more I can handle. I barely slept last night, and with this high-stakes meeting tomorrow. She trailed off as her phone buzzed. A reflex made her grab it. Sean Mitchell. Meeting in 10? Need to finalize details for tomorrow. The message glowed on the screen, mocking her feeble attempt at relaxation. Work? Dr. Carter asked with a sympathetic tilt of her head. Camille nodded, lips pressed tight. Yes, I can't escape it. Dr. Carter offered a gentle smile. Our time is nearly up, but before we end, I want you to consider one question. What do you really want out of all this? The career success, the stable marriage, are you sure they're in sync with each other? Or is there a conflict you haven't confronted? Camille blinked, stunned by the question. I'm not sure, she admitted softly. In truth, she had never stopped to ask herself that. She was too busy running toward the next goalpost. Doctor. Carter rose, extending a hand in a friendly handshake. Think about it, and when you're ready, we can dive deeper. Gathering her purse and coat, Camille felt her phone vibrating again. She forced a polite smile. Thank you, Dr. Carter. I'll do that. She turned to leave, her mind already racing with incomplete answers and the flickering image of Sean's smug grin. Outside, the gray sky persisted, mirroring the uncertainty in her head. She glanced at her phone, another text from Sean. The world of high-stakes deals beckoned her back, refusing to wait while she sorted out her tangled life. As she hurried off, one thought echoed louder than the drizzling rain. Am I fighting the wrong battles? Shadows stretched across the smaller conference room as Camille tapped her pen against the dark wooden table, waiting for Sean and the others to arrive. Outside, the midday sun filtered through tinted windows, giving the space a stark, almost clinical glow. She briefly glanced over her notes plans, data about Mr. Randall Wellington's business interests, risk assessments. Her heart thumped faster than she liked to admit. A sudden burst of chatter in the hallway alerted her that the team was approaching. Sean stepped in first, followed by Nina and a junior associate named Tracy, whom Brett Wilson had assigned to take minutes. Sean's eyes found Camille immediately, his expression a blend of cockiness and curiosity. "All set?" he asked, sliding into a seat opposite her. Camille nodded, forcing composure. "Yes, let's outline how we're presenting these ideas to Mr. Wellington." Tracy adjusted her laptop, and Nina situated herself next to Camille. The meeting started with typical procedure, reviewing bullet points, discussing potential pitfalls. Sean occasionally interjected a sarcastic remark enough to keep tension in the air. When they reached a disagreement about whether to approach Wellington's team with a formal multi-step pitch or a more casual, socially oriented one, Sean leaned forward, forearms on the table. "You realize Randall Wellington's known for last-minute changes, right? He's the type who might seal a deal over a few scotch and sodas, not by reading bullet points on a PowerPoint." Camille's pulse jumped. She loathed how Sean reduced thoroughness to just bullet points. Pressing her lips together, she replied, "Wellington may enjoy a casual vibe, but that doesn't mean we ignore structure. He'll appreciate a sense of stability, especially given the scrutiny his public image faces." A flicker of a smile curled on Sean's mouth, spoken like a true straight arrow, "But I think my angle might have him signing sooner." She could practically taste the challenge in his tone. Nina and Tracy exchanged uncertain looks. Before Camille could retort, Sean dropped the bombshell with a casual shrug. "How about we make this interesting? A friendly wager on who actually nails the deal first." Nina widened her eyes. "A bet? Seriously?" Sean shrugged, still locking eyes with Camille. "Just a little office fun. If I close his commitment, Camille has to—" He paused for effect, "carry out any office duty I ask for a week. Same goes for me if she's the one who seals it." Tracy typed furiously, her cheeks pink. She clearly hadn't expected this twist. Camille inhaled, ignoring the flutter of both apprehension and some odd flicker of thrill. "And Brett's okay with this?" she challenged, arching an eyebrow. Sean only smirked. "We're all about results, right? As long as we land the client, I doubt Brett cares how we get there. Unless you're scared, of course." Camille's jaw tensed. "I'm not afraid of anything, especially not you." "Perfect," Sean said smoothly, tossing a pen onto the table as though it were a gauntlet. "Then we have ourselves a bet." A weighted silence fell. Nina opened her mouth as if to interject, but a quick glance from Camille stopped her. The tension was tangible, an electric current humming in the stale air. "All right," Camille said at last, voice measured. "Let's finalize our respective plans. We'll see whose strategy wins over Mr. Wellington." The meeting resumed, though every point carried an undercurrent of rivalry. By the time it concluded, everyone seemed on edge, particularly Nina, who kept shifting in her seat as though the atmosphere was stifling her. As they filed out, Sean lingered behind, giving Camille a faux innocent grin. "Looking forward to your dutiful assistance if I pull this off," he teased, voice low. Camille refused to let him see any hint of self-doubt. "We'll see," she shot back, turning away. Her heart drummed in her chest as she left the room. Was that adrenaline or something else? She wondered, forcing her attention back to her schedule. She had exactly 3 hours before meeting with Brett and needed every minute to refine her pitch. But a more unsettling realization crept in. Part of her was more rattled by Sean's gaze than she cared to admit. That evening, rain clouds began rolling in again, though the downpour hadn't quite started. Camille arrived home, still wired from the day's tensions at the firm. She entered to find the living room lights dimmed, the aroma of garlic and onion drifting from the kitchen. Evan stood at the stove, stirring a small pot of sauce. He wore a gray t-shirt and jeans, hair slightly messy as though he'd been running his hands through it all day. Stacks of papers, presumably his new manuscript, covered the dining table. "Hey," he greeted, glancing over his shoulder. "I'm making a simple stir-fry. Figured we could use a hot meal." Camille felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She was drained, irritated by Sean, stressed about Wellington, yet there was a pang of guilt seeing Evan trying to be considerate. "Thanks," she said curtly, slipping off her blazer. "I need to check a few emails first." He gave a small nod. "Sure, but it's almost done, so maybe in 10 minutes? Camille's phone buzzed. She glanced down an email from Nina about a revised approach for Mr. Wellington. Her eyes flickered with annoyance. "Actually, it can't wait, sorry." She hurried into the living room, setting her laptop on the coffee table. From the kitchen, Evan sighed audibly. The hiss of a frying pan overshadowed the tension for a moment. After several minutes of frantic typing, Camille noticed an awkward silence. She stood and walked into the kitchen. Evan looked up. "Dinner's ready." He spoke softly but didn't hide his frustration. They sat at the small kitchen table. The stir-fry smelled wonderful ginger, vegetables, a hint of soy sauce. Yet Camille poked her fork at it distractedly, her mind still on tomorrow's big push with Wellington. Evan cleared his throat. "I was hoping, after we eat, maybe you could look at a chapter I've been working on. It's more in line with mainstream fiction like we talked about. I tried integrating your feedback about tone." His request triggered the day's pent-up anger. She exhaled sharply. "Evan, not tonight. I'm swamped. This pitch is massive, and I'm sure you know how important it is for me to succeed at Montgomery and Reed." Evan leaned back, crossing his arms. "I do know. It's all you ever talk about. But I've been trying too, Camille. You can't keep dismissing everything I do." Her fork clattered on the plate. "You think I want to dismiss you? I'm drowning at work. But you're not exactly bringing in anything stable. You're—" She paused, biting back harsher words. Evan's gaze hardened. "What? I'm just a dreamer? That's what you're implying, right?" Camille stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping the floor. "I'm implying that your writing isn't paying bills. We can't float forever on one person's salary, and I'm the one in a dogfight for top clients, in case you hadn't noticed." His cheeks burned. "I do notice. Do. Every day I notice how you come home, treat me like I'm incompetent, then lock yourself in your own stress. You don't even ask how I'm doing." Something snapped. Camille's voice shook with bitterness. "Fine, Evan. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about how we barely have savings left, how I'm carrying the mortgage, the utilities, everything. Meanwhile, you're tinkering with manuscripts and waiting for some big break." Evan pressed his lips together, fury flaring in his eyes. He reached for the skillet on the stove, as if to distract himself by cleaning, but the handle was still hot. He winced, dropping it with a loud clang. The noise amplified the anger simmering between them. Camille threw her hands up. "I can't do this right now." She marched out of the kitchen, heading upstairs. Behind her, she heard Evan call out, "That's right! Just walk away!" She didn't respond. In their bedroom, she slammed the door shut, heart pounding. The argument reverberated inside her like a bad echo. Folding onto the edge of the bed, Camille rubbed her forehead. The day felt suffocating Sean's taunts, the mounting pressure of tomorrow's pitch, and now this fight at home. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows as if nature itself were reminding her that a storm was inevitable. The next day, the sunlight returned brighter than ever. But Camille hardly noticed as she trudged into work, mind still clouded from last night's fight. Nina greeted her near the reception area, offering a timid smile. "Morning, Camille. Heard you have a quick check-in with Brett before lunch?" Camille nodded, forcing a polite expression. "Yes, we'll finalize some points for tomorrow's meeting with Wellington. Let's hope it goes smoothly." A few desks away, Sean chatted casually with Lauren, the firm's efficient, and sometimes gossipy, secretary. He spotted Camille and sauntered over, that signature grin never far from his face. "Hey, about that bet." She rolled her eyes. "Sean, I've got actual work. I'm not in the mood." He laughed, ignoring her exasperation. "It's almost noon. Could you fetch me a coffee? 2 creams, no sugar? We might as well get comfortable with the idea you'll be making plenty of coffee runs for me soon enough." Nina stifled a gasp. "Wow, direct, aren't we?" Camille inhaled sharply. "Excuse me?" Sean shrugged. "That's the price of competition, right? Unless you back out." Her pride bristled. "He's testing me, seeing if I'll fold." She set her jaw. "Fine. Let's see how you like your coffee when it's made under protest." Within minutes, she stood in the break room narrow walls, a faint whir of the vending machine in the corner. A small stack of mismatched mugs lined a drying rack. Camille set one beneath the coffee maker, pressing the brew button. Steam hissed upward, curling around her face. Footsteps approached. She turned to see Sean leaning casually against the doorframe. "Figured I'd come supervise," he teased, arms folded across his chest. The overhead fluorescent light highlighted the confident angles of his features, and Camille found herself momentarily thrown off. She squared her shoulders. "You must enjoy getting on my nerves." He shrugged, stepping closer. "Let's just say the banter's more fun than the usual corporate politics." His gaze flicked down to her blouse, deep navy, neatly pressed, and lingered. "I see you're dressed to impress for Brett's meeting. Guess you're pulling out all the stops." Camille scowled, pouring steaming coffee into the mug. "Unlike you, I prefer to present a polished image." Sean chuckled. "Can't argue with that." He stepped even closer, voice dropping lower. "Still, you might need more than a pristine outfit to beat me. Have you thought about that?" She felt the air grow thick with an odd tension, part rivalry, part something she didn't want to name. "Don't flatter yourself," she managed coolly. "We'll see who Mr. Wellington picks, but I'm betting he prefers substance over flashy confidence." He leaned in, brushing imaginary lint off her shoulder in a move that felt strangely intimate. "We'll see," he echoed, lips curving in a half-smile. "By the way, the coffee smells great. Thanks, Camille." Her pulse quickened. The faintest hint of his cologne mingled with the aroma of coffee, making her stomach do an unsettling flip. Sean stepped back, letting her pass. She moved swiftly, mug in hand, not wanting him to see the heat rising to her cheeks. Outside in the corridor, Nina waited, eyebrows raised in question. Camille handed Sean his coffee with forced composure. "Here, enjoy," she muttered, turning on her heel before he could respond. As she walked away, she sensed his eyes on her. Her own thoughts churned. Why am I letting him get under my skin like this? She tried to push it aside, focusing on the immediate task meeting Brett to finalize tomorrow's pitch. But somewhere in the back of her mind, Sean's smug grin lingered, stirring both anger and a faint spark of intrigue she wished would just vanish. Late afternoon, Camille found herself in the now familiar office of Dr. Cassandra Carter. Diffused daylight filtered through blinds, casting gentle stripes across a rug in muted pastels. The soft gurgle of the corner fountain provided a soothing background hum, but Camille's nerves buzzed too loudly to fully enjoy it. Dr. Carter greeted her with a welcoming smile. "Hi, Camille. How have things been since our last chat?" Camille settled into the armchair, exhaling slowly. Busy, stressful, and complicated. She paused, glancing at her phone, momentarily flashing a text from Sean. "Don't forget, a deal's a deal." It spiked her annoyance, so she silenced it. "Want to elaborate, Doctor?" Carter asked gently, crossing one leg over the other. "Something at work?" "Work is intense," Camille began, eyes flicking around the warm-toned walls. "I have this major client pitch tomorrow. The competition is getting personal. There's a coworker, Sean, let's just say he thrives on pushing my buttons." A humorless laugh escaped. "And I hate that it works." Dr. Carter nodded, her expression empathetic. "Does it bother you because he's threatening your professional success? Or is there more to it?" Camille tensed. For a moment, she considered revealing the odd magnetic tension with Sean. But that would be insane, she thought. She wasn't about to confess to feeling any attraction. Instead, she pivoted. "He's arrogant and he questions my approach. It's frustrating. He's the exact opposite of my husband in every sense." A fleeting concern crossed Dr. Carter's face. "How are things at home? Last time, we touched on your frustration with Evan's career struggles." Camille frowned, recalling last night's argument. "We're fighting more," she admitted. "I'm losing patience with his slow progress. Then I feel guilty because he's actually trying. But I can't shake this feeling he's holding me back." Dr. Carter set down her notepad. "You said you don't feel he's as driven as you'd like. Do you still love him?" Camille's lips pressed tight. She stared at her hands a moment before answering. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "It's like I'm so focused on climbing the ladder, and he's stuck in a creative loop. I keep resenting him, then resenting myself for feeling that way." Dr. Carter regarded her compassionately. "That kind of conflict can create emotional distance. Sometimes people in this situation find themselves looking elsewhere for validation or connection. Any sign of that for you?" Camille's breath caught, mind flashing to Sean's infuriating grin in the break room. "No, not exactly," she lied, voice tight. "I mean, I'm frustrated, but I wouldn't cheat on Evan." The statement felt hollow on her tongue, yet she forced herself to hold steady. "All right," Dr. Carter said gently, not pressing the issue. "Be honest with yourself about what you need. If you feel disconnected from Evan, or from your marriage as a whole, it might be worth confronting before it grows worse." Camille nodded, though her thoughts were chaotic. She glanced at the silent phone in her lap, recalling the fleeting moment earlier when Sean had brushed against her shoulder. It was nothing, she scolded herself. Just tension or rivalry, right? Before leaving, she confided, "It's not just him. Sometimes I think maybe I can't handle a marriage right now. My job is everything. That's a terrible thing to say, isn't it?" Dr. Carter's eyes softened. "It's not terrible. It's honest. What matters is how you handle that truth with communication, with compromise, or by deciding what's truly best for both you and Evan." Camille swallowed hard. "Thanks, Doc," she murmured, forcing a small smile. "I'll keep that in mind." Moments later, she stepped out into the corridor, the noise of city traffic filtering in from downstairs. Just then, her phone vibrated again, a text from Sean, his name glaring on the screen. She inhaled, ignoring the pang in her stomach. She wouldn't open it here, not in front of Dr. Carter's door. Walking briskly to the elevator, Camille felt like two different people fighting for dominance. The determined, ambitious lawyer who refused to lose to Sean, and the troubled wife who couldn't quite figure out her marriage. Focus on tomorrow, she told herself. Everything else can wait. But as she reached the glass entrance of the building, the twilight sky reflecting off the polished floors, she realized everything else was creeping closer by the minute, threatening to converge into one messy tangle she couldn't outrun. Late-night fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the nearly deserted Montgomery and Reed building. Papers and sticky notes were scattered across the large conference table where Camille sat, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. She typed furiously on her laptop, finalizing the last segment of Mr. Wellington's file. The silence felt thick until footsteps echoed in the hallway. Sean strode in, tie loosened, jacket slung over his arm. He wore that trademark smirk, but there was something else in his gaze. A predatory spark, fueled by the tension between them. "Burning the midnight oil, I see," he said, dropping his jacket on a chair. Camille pressed her lips together, refusing to let her heart race. "We both need this done by morning. Why am I not surprised you're here?" He stepped closer, glancing over her screen. "Just making sure you're not getting a head start on me. Our bet still stands, remember?" He leaned in, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the stale air. "But I'm guessing you're too thorough to cheat." She snorted, turning slightly to keep some distance. "I don't cheat," she said pointedly, though her stomach twisted with guilt at the mere mention of the word. "Unlike some people, I do things above board." Sean's eyes lit with amusement. "Right, Miss Perfect." He dropped into a chair next to her, propping his elbows on the table. A moment of quiet settled, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Then, almost casually, he asked, "So how confident are you about landing Wellington tomorrow?" Camille exhaled. "Confident enough." She tapped the screen. "I have a well-structured approach. Detailed risk analysis, projected timelines, contingency plans, everything he'll need to see we're not messing around." "Sounds riveting," Sean teased, though his tone held grudging respect. "Me, I'm banking on playing to his ego. Wellington loves a bold gamble." She bristled, sensing he might be right. Still, she forced a dismissive shrug. Good luck with that. They worked side by side for a while, Camille refining bullet points, Sean flipping through reference folders. The clock read midnight. The hush of the building made every rustle of paper and click of the keyboard unnervingly loud. At one point, Camille rose to grab a file from the far cabinet. She noticed Sean watching her, eyes lingering in a way that sent a flicker of heat through her. She tried ignoring it, rummaging through the cabinet's contents. "Why are you staring?" He stood, crossing the room in a few strides. "Because you're interesting, Camille." His voice was low, a rumble that made her spine tingle. It's not often I meet someone who gives as good as she gets. She spun around to face him. Don't start, she warned, arms folded. I have no patience left tonight. Something in Sean's expression shifted. The distance between them felt electric. He stepped closer, so close she could see the faint stubble on his jaw. I'm just making an observation. A challenge lurked in his eyes. You're wound tight. Maybe you need to let go just a little. Her pulse hammered. She told herself to shove him away or storm out, but the day's frustrations, the unsettled anger at Evan, the stress of tomorrow's pitch, all of it collided. And in that charged second, something snapped inside her. Without warning, Sean leaned down. His lips brushed hers tentative at first, like he was testing her reaction. Camille froze. Every rational thought screamed stop, but her emotions, battered by tension and resentment, shoved caution aside. She found herself kissing him back, the file she held tumbling from her grip. A swirl of heat spiraled through her. She tasted his breath, felt the firm press of his hand at her waist. Her mind flashed with guilt. Evan. The name drifted somewhere in the haze, but the moment burned too fiercely. Sean pulled her closer and she responded, heart pounding in her ears. After a few breathless seconds, Camille broke away, gasping. She stared at him, lips parted in shock. What am I doing? Sean's chest rose and fell, his gaze unsteady. Camille. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. We can't, this is insane. But even as she spoke, she couldn't deny the lingering hunger in her body. His next move was bold. He reached for her laptop, shut it with a click. No more work tonight, he murmured. We've done enough. They gravitated to the corner of the conference room, hidden from the glass door's view. A swirl of conflicting emotions seized Camille's: shame, excitement, betrayal, anger. Yet she didn't stop him when his hands found her waist again, nor did she stop herself from letting the tension carry them further. The locked hush of midnight settled around them. Paperwork scattered underfoot, documents half finished, as they crossed a line neither could undo. When it ended, breathing ragged, suits rumpled, they were left in a collision of euphoria and dread. Camille disentangled herself, running a shaky hand through her hair. This can't happen again, she whispered, voice raw. She avoided Sean's eyes, kneeling to gather spilled files. Her heart thudded like a drum. He said nothing at first, just straightened his tie, clearly rattled. At last, he exhaled. I won't mention it if you don't. Let's finish up these notes. Then go home. Camille nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. They worked in tense silence, side by side, both acutely aware that the real damage was already done. Sunlight poured through the bedroom blinds, waking Camille far too early. She blinked, disoriented, then realized she'd crawled into bed sometime around 3 a.m. after leaving the office in a daze. A wave of dread hit her. What did I do last night? She sat up slowly, eyes landing on the rumpled sheet beside her where Evan slept, face turned away. A pang of guilt stabbed her chest. Evan. He had no idea. Her mind flickered to the memory of Sean's hands on her waist, his breath mingling with hers. Heat shot through her, followed by self-disgust. Quietly, she slipped out of bed, heading to the bathroom. The mirror's reflection showed tousled hair, faint circles under her eyes, and an expression weighed down by shame. She turned on the shower, letting hot water pound across her shoulders like a cleansing torrent, but no amount of scrubbing could wash away the memory. Camille pressed her forehead against the tile, wrestling with the realization. She had betrayed Evan. I'm not this person, she thought, heart pounding. I'm not a cheater. When she finally emerged, she wrapped a towel around herself and crept back into the bedroom, half expecting Evan to be awake. But he was still out cold, deeply asleep. Her chest tightened. She couldn't bear to look at him. Silently, she dressed in a crisp navy suit, brushing out her hair with mechanical efficiency. Downstairs, a glance at the clock showed she was already running late for the Wellington pitch. She grabbed her briefcase and a half-eaten granola bar from the counter. As she turned to leave, guilt twisted her stomach again. She should at least say goodbye to Evan. But something held her back, fear, or maybe a sense of unworthiness. Instead, she slipped out the door. At Montgomery and Reed, the usual morning bustle was overshadowed by the major client's impending arrival. Posters with "Welcome, Mr. Wellington" hung in the lobby, and staff rushed to ensure the boardroom was impeccable. Camille's nerves sizzled with a mixture of professional stress and personal torment. She spotted Sean near the elevator, reviewing a folder with Lauren's help. Their eyes locked for a split second. He gave her a curt nod, his face unreadable. She forced herself to meet his gaze, then quickly looked away. "Act normal," she told herself. Inside the elevator, Nina greeted her. "Morning, Camille. Big day." Then, noticing Camille's tense expression, she asked, "Everything okay?" Camille mustered a tight smile. "Just pre-meeting jitters. Let's finalize those talking points before Mr. Wellington arrives." Nina nodded, though her concerned glance lingered. Camille pressed the button for the 20th floor, hoping the ride up would calm her racing heart. They gathered in the executive boardroom where a lavish spread of pastries and coffee had been set out. Brett Wilson stood at the head of the table, exchanging pleasantries with Mr. Randall Wellington, a tall, broad-shouldered man in an expensive suit, exuding an air of practiced charm. Camille steeled herself. She approached with a confident handshake. "Mr. Wellington, Camille Lawson, good to finally meet you." He smiled, a glint in his eye. "Pleasure's mine. Brett has told me about your thorough approach." Before Camille could reply, Sean slid in with a casual grin. "And I'm Sean Mitchell. Heard you like a bit of flair in your legal strategy, sir." Wellington's laugh boomed. "I sure do. Let's see what you both have to offer." The meeting commenced. Camille presented meticulously, using slides, graphs, and bullet points. She highlighted legal pitfalls, potential public relations angles, and how Montgomery and Reed could protect Wellington's brand. Despite her rattled emotions, she delivered every line with precision. Then Sean took over, weaving a narrative about agile tactics, personal networks, and the advantage of being bold yet discreet. Wellington nodded along, clearly intrigued. Throughout the pitch, Camille felt Sean's presence next to her like a shadow. She recalled the events of the previous night, her skin prickling with unwanted awareness. Yet outwardly, she maintained her poised professionalism, firing back clarifications whenever Sean tried to overshadow her. When the session ended, Brett escorted Mr. Wellington out, leaving staff behind to clean up. Sean lingered, stacking his papers, avoiding direct eye contact with Camille. She turned to Nina, exhaling a shaky breath. "I need a minute," she murmured, stepping out into the hallway. Alone, Camille pressed her back to the wall, eyes closing. The guilt gnawed at her, fear that she'd lose the client, fear that she'd lost herself. She wondered how Sean could appear so calm, probably because he's used to living life on the edge. A surge of envy and disgust flickered inside her. This was a mistake, a huge mistake. Her phone chimed, startling her. She glanced at the screen, a text from Evan asking about dinner. An ache spread through her. I don't deserve a normal dinner with him. She shoved the phone away, swallowing the guilt. For now, she had a job to finish. There'd be time for regret later. That evening, the day's tension returned in full force as Camille stepped through her front door. The house was strangely quiet, lights dim. She found Evan in the living room, flipping through a stack of printed pages. He looked up, forcing a tentative smile. "Hey," he said, "I made some notes on a new story concept." He gestured to the coffee table. "It's shorter, more contemporary, like we discussed. Thought you might..." Her nerves were shot after the pitch, which ended inconclusively. The swirl of emotions regarding Sean and the looming dread that she might lose Mr. Wellington to him. She dropped her briefcase on the floor, interrupting Evan. "Not tonight. I can't, Evan. I'm exhausted." He frowned. "I get you're busy, but I just want a few minutes of your time. This could be my shot at something more commercial." Camille sighed, collapsing onto the couch. "Look, I'm dealing with a lot at work. Can we talk about your manuscript some other time?" Evan's lips thinned. "You keep saying that. Another time, later, not now. I'm starting to think there's never going to be a good time for you." Irritation flared. She felt corners of her guilt sharpen into defensiveness. "Well, maybe that's because every time I turn around, you're stuck in your own little writing bubble, ignoring the fact that I'm fighting tooth and nail at the firm to keep us afloat." His eyes narrowed. "Don't act like I'm just some burden. I've been trying new directions. applying for freelance gigs, doing everything I can to contribute. But you only see what I haven't done. Camille stood abruptly, heart pounding with anger. She couldn't fully explain some of it at herself, some at Evan, some at Sean. "Because it's never enough, Evan!" The words spewed out before she could stop them. "I'm busting my back at Montgomery and Reed while you're barely bringing anything in. We can't keep living on my income alone." His voice trembled with anger. "I've heard that tune before. You act like I'm worthless." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Do you even remember why we got married in the first place? We used to believe in each other." That stung. Camille's chest tightened, but she didn't back down. "Yeah, well, believing doesn't pay the bills," she snapped. "I'm sick of carrying this load alone. You're—" A pause. The cruel phrase hovered in her mind. "You're an anchor pulling me down." She almost spat it out, but changed the wording last minute. "You're not pulling your weight, Evan. I'm sorry, but it's the truth." Evan's face went rigid, knuckles whitening around the pages he held. "So that's how you see me? A leech? Some parasite?" She flung her hands up. "Maybe I do. You said it, not me." Regret pinched her heart the second the words left her mouth, but anger pushed her forward. "If you can't step up, then get out of my way." For a beat, silence rang through the living room. Evan stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. "Fine," he muttered, voice thick. "If that's how you feel, maybe I should pack up and go somewhere else. Let you enjoy your precious career alone." Camille's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. How did it come to this so fast? She twisted away. "Do what you want," she said, biting each word. "I don't care." But her quavering tone betrayed her real pain. Evan snatched up his notes, cramming them haphazardly into a folder. "I can't believe you," he said, voice shaking. Then he stormed out of the living room, stomping upstairs. Moments later, a door slammed. Camille remained standing by the couch, arms wrapped around herself as if to hold in the turmoil. Her anger dissolved into a swirling pit of guilt and sorrow. She sank onto the cushion, feeling the weight of the argument crush her chest. "I'm such a mess." She closed her eyes, the echoes of their fight ringing in her ears. If she was brutally honest, part of her felt relieved that Evan left the room less chance he might see the shame in her eyes. Because beneath all this anger, she knew she had crossed an unforgivable line last night, one that overshadowed any blame she placed on him. 2 days later, Camille found herself once again in Dr. Cassandra Carter's calm office. The gentle lamp glow accentuated warm colors on the walls, and the faint sound of trickling water from the small corner fountain filled the silence. Camille sat stiffly, hands clasped in her lap. "How have you been?" Dr. Carter began, her tone friendly yet focused. Camille pressed her lips together. I need to tell you something." She inhaled, steeling herself. "I did something. Her voice wavered. "I slept with Sean, my coworker." Dr. Carter's eyes flickered with empathy, no shock or reproach. "That must feel heavy to carry. When did this happen?" 2 nights ago, Camille admitted softly, gaze lowered. "We were at the office late, finishing work. One thing led to another, and I can't believe I'm even saying it out loud." Dr. Carter leaned forward slightly, hands folded in her lap. "How do you feel about it?" Camille laughed bitterly. Awful, guilty, and strangely relieved in a twisted way. She rubbed her forehead. "Which makes me hate myself. I love Evan, or at least I did, but everything's so messed up at home. Part of me feels like maybe this was some escape hatch, and now I don't know where that leaves my marriage." Dr. Carter let the words settle before responding. "You mentioned guilt and relief. Sometimes affairs happen when someone's under immense pressure, feeling trapped or misunderstood. It doesn't excuse the betrayal, but it can be a sign that deeper issues in the marriage have been ignored." Camille's eyes stung with tears she fought to keep at bay. "Evan and I can't talk without fighting. I feel like I'm the only one paying bills living in the real world. He thinks I'm heartless, that I've forgotten why we fell in love. And maybe I have. I'm just so tired." A tender hush followed. Then Dr. Carter asked gently, "Does this mean you're ready to end your marriage? Or do you see yourself wanting to fix it?" The question made Camille's chest tighten. She pictured Evan's hurt expression, the echo of his footsteps storming away. Am I done? She wiped at the corner of her eye. I don't know. This fling with Sean, it's not about love. It was impulsive, fueled by anger and stress. But maybe it's a sign that my marriage is beyond saving. Dr. Carter nodded, measuring her response. Or it could be a wake-up call. Some couples can rebuild after an affair, but it requires honesty, deep reflection, and both parties willing to move forward. Camille's shoulders slumped. Evan would never forgive this. He thinks I already looked down on him. If he finds out, it'd destroy him. She swallowed. But part of me can't keep living a lie. They fell into silence. Outside, a car horn blared faintly in the distance, reminding Camille that life marched on, oblivious to her personal crisis. She took a shaky breath. I keep wondering if I should just end it, our marriage. Let him go so I can focus on my career. Dr. Carter's gaze softened. That's a huge decision. You might need time to truly understand what's driving your choices, your ambition, resentment, and any lingering love for Evan. Rushing to a conclusion in the midst of guilt can lead to regrets later. Camille closed her eyes briefly. The swirl of emotions felt like a hurricane. I know. But I can't pretend everything's fine. I'm failing at everything. My job, my marriage, my sense of self. It's all unraveling. Dr. Carter offered a tissue box. Camille took one, blinking away tears. You're at a crossroads, Camille. You need to figure out what you genuinely want and what you're willing to do to get there. That may involve painful honesty with yourself and with Evan. Camille nodded numbly. He'll hate me. Her voice cracked. Yet I'm also so angry at him, at us, for letting things get this bad. It's like I need an escape route, but it feels so wrong. Dr. Carter gave a small, understanding smile. You're not trapped. You have choices. They won't be easy, but this is an opportunity to confront the issues head-on instead of burying them. Camille exhaled, fresh tears slipping down her cheeks. I appreciate that. I just wish I'd realized it before crossing this line. She dabbed at her eyes. Now I might have blown up my marriage for good. After the session, Camille stepped out into the corridor, shoulders heavy, heart heavier. She felt the burden of her confession as both a release and a condemnation. What now? She thought, heading for the elevator. Where do I even begin to repair this or walk away from it? Her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it. The real question swirling in her mind was whether she truly wanted to fix things with Evan, or if the affair was a final sign that she'd outgrown their life together. As the elevator doors slid shut, she closed her eyes. No matter what path she chose, there would be no easy answers. The only certainty was that her old life had cracked wide open, and she was left to piece together whatever remained. Midnight draped the living room in soft, shadowy hues. Camille sat on the edge of the sofa, legs tucked beneath her, staring at the door. She could still hear the faint hum of city traffic through the closed windows, but every other sound in the townhouse felt unnaturally still. At last, the doorknob turned. Evan stepped in, carrying a small grocery bag. He froze when he spotted her, eyes flicking from her anxious posture to the solemn look in her eyes. You're still up? Camille cleared her throat, heart hammering. We need to talk. He set the bag on the kitchen counter. Yeah, I figured. You've been avoiding me for days. There was weariness in his voice. The tension between them had become a permanent fixture, but tonight, something in her tone told him it was different. Evan, she began softly, fingers gripping the sofa cushion. I have to tell you the truth. She paused, gathering courage. I cheated on you, with someone at work. Silence dropped like a heavy curtain. A flash of confusion and pain ripped across Evan's face. He blinked rapidly, as though trying to process the words. What? With "Are you serious?" His voice trembled, raw and disbelieving. Camille swallowed, nodding. It was a mistake, a terrible one. But it happened. And I can't lie anymore. Evan's jaw tightened. He looked around the room as if searching for something solid to brace himself against. When? How long? He managed, bitterness bleeding into each word. Just once, she whispered, tears burning in her eyes. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I'm sorry. She pushed herself up from the sofa, wanting to approach him, but the fury in his eyes stopped her cold. He released a short, bitter laugh. Sorry? He marched past her, slamming the living room lamp switch on, flooding the space with harsh light. I don't even know what to say to that. His gaze flicked to her ring, the symbol of their marriage that now felt mockingly bright. Camille's breath hitched. I never wanted to hurt you, but we've been falling apart for so long and— You think this excuses it? He snapped, voice cracking. We had problems, sure, but crossing that line? You've destroyed whatever was left. She tried to explain, voice trembling. I felt trapped. Work was suffocating me, and we were always fighting about money, about your writing. Suddenly, Evan grabbed his laptop from the coffee table. With a furious motion, he hurled it against the wall. The crack of plastic shattered the air. Camille recoiled, heart pounding. She had never seen him snap like this. He glared at her, chest heaving. So you decided to sleep with someone else? His hands clenched into fists by his sides, tears brimming in his own eyes. Was I really that worthless to you? Camille's throat constricted. No, you're not worthless. Her voice emerged, shaky. I'm broken too, Evan. I know I've messed everything up. He took a ragged breath, looking like he was struggling to keep from shouting again. Why are you telling me this now? She closed her eyes briefly, letting a tear slip free. Because I can't pretend, and I want a divorce. Evan's face twisted with raw anguish. He stared at her, lips parted in shock. A divorce, he echoed, voice hollow. Just like that? She nodded, hardly able to speak around the lump in her throat. This marriage is killing both of us. I don't see a way back. A strangled silence followed, and she forced her next words. I'm so sorry. Evan spun around, pacing near the battered laptop. His gaze roamed aimlessly, then pinned her with a hurt so deep it nearly stole her breath. Fine. You want out? He swallowed, voice dropping to a near whisper. Then get out. She moved to gather her purse, the hollow ring of his words echoing in her chest. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, I'll pack some things. Before she could say more, he stormed into the hallway, slamming a door behind him. The jarring sound reverberated through the townhouse. Left alone, Camille stood there, trembling. A swirl of shame and relief coursed through her veins. The weight of her confession pressed down, heavier than she ever imagined. As the silence settled once more, she realized there was no escaping the aftermath. I've broken everything, she thought, tears finally spilling onto her cheeks. Less than a week after her confrontation with Evan, Camille arrived at Montgomery and Reed, nerves stretched taut. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed restless nights. She navigated the bustling corridors, aware that a critical announcement regarding the Wellington case was imminent. In the conference room, staff milled around anxiously. Nina, looking frazzled, hurried over. Have you heard anything yet? She asked, voice hushed. Camille shook her head, glancing at the empty seat where Brett Wilson would soon appear. Nothing official. I just know Mr. Wellington was leaning heavily toward Sean's more adventurous approach. Nina frowned sympathetically. I'm sure you did your best. But her words felt hollow, given the looming tension in the air. Minutes later, Brett strode in, a subdued smile on his face, followed by Sean. Team, Brett began. I want to congratulate Sean Mitchell for securing Mr. Randall Wellington's business. Mr. Wellington has specifically requested Sean head the case file and negotiations moving forward. A wave of scattered applause filled the room, but Camille felt a dull ache in her chest. Despite her turmoil at home, she had clung to the hope that her thorough, risk-averse strategy might win the client's favor. Now, that slim thread snapped. Brett continued, Sean, your bold plan clearly resonated. I'm recommending you for a lead counsel position on this project. This also places you in line for senior partner consideration. He gestured for Sean to say a few words. Sean flashed his trademark grin. Thanks, Brett. I appreciate everyone's support, especially the healthy competition from my colleagues. His glance flicked to Camille, cold satisfaction evident in his gaze. So this is how it ends, she thought, unable to tear her eyes away from the victorious aura he exuded. With the announcement over, the team dispersed. Nina offered Camille a remorseful squeeze of the arm. I'm sorry, she whispered. Camille mustered a stiff nod, still reeling. Once alone, Sean approached, feigning empathy. "Tough break, Camille. But hey, no hard feelings. Business is business." She stared at him, bitterness flaring. The memory of their one-night betrayal at the office twisted her stomach anew. "No hard feelings? You used me in every sense." But she forced a curt smile. "Congratulations, Sean. Guess you got what you wanted." A flash of something regret or arrogance crossed his face. "I'm just doing my job," he said, shrugging. "Brett recognizes talent." She turned away, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of a deeper reaction. "Right. Good luck with Wellington," she tossed over her shoulder, leaving him behind. Back at her desk, Camille felt the weight of multiple failures crushing down, her marriage on the brink of collapse, her big case lost to Sean, and the hollow ache of personal betrayal. She tried focusing on smaller client tasks, but her head pounded with every email. A short while later, Brett called her to his office. She entered to find him typing at his desk, a pensive look on his face. "Camille," he began, lacing his fingers together, "I know you put a lot of effort into the Wellington proposal. But as you see, we're moving forward with Sean's strategy. He'll need your collaboration on final details, but you won't be leading." She forced composure. "Understood. I'll cooperate." Brett softened his voice. "I also notice you've seemed off lately. Is everything okay?" Camille's grip tightened on the chair. "Personal issues, but it won't affect my work." He nodded, though skepticism lingered in his gaze. "I see. Well, keep me informed if you need time off. You're a valuable asset, Camille. This loss doesn't define your future here." She wanted to believe him, but her gut told her otherwise. "Thanks, Mr. Wilson," she replied, rising to leave. "I'll be sure to handle my tasks." Walking back to her office, she glanced through the glass walls, observing Sean casually chatting with a couple of associates. Senior partner something I've dreamed about, now practically in his grasp. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from an unknown number. She opened it to find a brief message. "If you need to vent, call me Kristen." Camille felt a faint glimmer of gratitude. At least someone cared enough to reach out. But relief was fleeting. She sank into her desk chair, face in her hands, the finality of her defeat sinking in. Gray clouds hovered over the courthouse, a stark reflection of Camille's mood. She stepped onto the stone steps, drawing her coat tighter against the brisk air. In her hand, a slim folder containing divorce paperwork felt heavier than any legal document she'd handled professionally. Inside, Evan was already waiting in the corridor. He wore a subdued charcoal suit, eyes dark with unresolved anger. The tension between them was suffocating, words unspoken yet swirling in the sterile air. Their respective attorneys approached Camille's, representing her interest in finalizing a swift divorce, Evans pushing for minimal contention. Yet as they entered the small hearing room for a scheduled mediation, Camille sensed anything but calm. The mediator, a soft-spoken woman, guided them through formalities. "Let's address financial arrangements first. Mrs. Lawson?" She paused, checking the file. "Or rather, Miss Lawson if the divorce is granted. Do you propose alimony or any form of spousal support?" Camille swallowed, glancing at Evan. "He's still my husband on paper, at least." The memory of nights spent reading his manuscripts tugged at her heart, but the sting of betrayal lay heavier. "I'm willing to offer a temporary allowance until Evan finds stable work," she said quietly. Evan's jaw clenched. "I don't want a cent from her." His lawyer leaned in. "Evan, we discussed the practicality of—" "I said no," Evan snapped, not looking away from Camille. "This entire marriage was her show. Now she can keep the money, the house, everything. I want out, clean, no strings." A pang of regret hit Camille. She had never seen him so hardened, so full of scorn. "Evan, you don't have to," he cut her off. "Don't lecture me. You made your choice." The mediator attempted to steer the conversation back on track, explaining the typical settlement process, but Evan's furious gaze remained fixed on Camille. "Sign the papers," he demanded, "or have your lawyer do it. I just want to be done." Camille tried to speak, but her mouth went dry. She finally managed, "All right, if that's what you really want." Her attorney passed the documents down the table. She skimmed them, heart hammering as she saw the dissolution terms. Evan's face remained impassive as she wrote her signature. With a quick flourish of ink, she severed the legal bond of their marriage. Evan didn't hesitate. He signed next, muscles tensed, as though every stroke was an act of final release. When he finished, he pushed the papers away like a venomous snake. Camille felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. This is it. The mediator nodded, confirming they'd need only a judge's final approval to make it official. As they left the small room, Evan paused in the hallway, voice low with bitterness. You and your fancy law firm hope you're happy now. Camille opened her mouth but found no words. Guilt, sorrow, and an odd sense of relief tangled in her chest. Evan stormed out, his attorney trailing behind, leaving her alone with her lawyer. The quiet hush of the courthouse pressed in, highlighting how drastically her life had changed in a matter of weeks. Outside, she glanced at the sky. A drizzle began, tapping on the concrete steps. Pulling her coat tighter, she realized she'd never felt more vulnerable or more alone. The marriage she once believed in, even if half-heartedly, was essentially dissolved. Her illusions about love and loyalty lay shattered alongside the future they'd once planned. She descended the courthouse steps in the rain, uncertain of who she was now. A once ambitious lawyer with a fractured personal life and a professional dream slipping through her fingers. All that remained was the final hearing for the divorce to be fully binding. She blinked away tears, refusing to cry in public. Be strong, she told herself, but her chest ached with loss. Another gray afternoon enveloped the city, and Camille stood at the window of her office, gazing at the urban sprawl. Her reflection on the glass looked hollow-eyed, lost. The final blow had arrived that morning. An internal memo announced Sean Mitchell's official promotion as lead counsel on the Wellington account and a frontrunner for senior partner. Montgomery and Reed bustled beyond her door, but she could barely hear the usual hum of phones and chatter. This place used to be my dream, she thought, mind drifting back to the day she interviewed here, brimming with excitement. Now it felt like a hollow building where she'd lost both her professional standing and any vestige of personal peace. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Lauren, the firm's efficient secretary, peeked in. Camille? Brett would like to see you. Camille nodded, straightening her blazer out of habit. Sure, thanks. Walking to Brett Wilson's office, she noticed the swift sideways glances from co-workers. Some pitied her, others relished the office gossip of her downfall. Her heart sank, realizing she no longer had the energy to keep up appearances. Inside, Brett waved her to a chair. Camille, come in. Close the door. He cleared his throat. I'll be direct. We value your work, but we see some performance issues lately. Missed deadlines, lack of focus. She mustered a respectful tone. I understand. It's been a difficult time, but I can do better. The words sounded robotic even to her own ears. Brett sighed, drumming his pen on the desk. Sean's stepping up on major cases. With Mr. Wellington secured under his leadership, it's clear the firm's trajectory is in new hands. That said, I'm concerned you're burning out. If you need a leave of absence, we can discuss. Camille paused. A flicker of anger rose. A leave of absence? More like a gentle push out the door. She realized she didn't have the fight left in her to cling to a position that no longer felt right. Standing, she smoothed her jacket, each motion fueling a clarity she hadn't felt in ages. Thank you for your concern, she began, voice steadier than expected. But I believe I need something more permanent. Brett's brow furrowed. You mean resignation? She nodded, heart thumping. I'm grateful for the opportunities here, but it's time for me to step away. He looked genuinely disappointed but not entirely surprised. All right. If that's your decision, we'll process the paperwork. He offered a sympathetic half-smile. Take care of yourself, Camille. Sometimes a step back can lead to bigger things in the future. Camille forced a polite nod and exited, a swirl of finality following her. Bigger things? Right now I feel so small, she thought. Yet, bizarrely, a sense of relief crept in. No more forced smiles around Sean, no more stares from colleagues who knew she'd lost it all. Her final act was to pack her office. Nina stopped by, eyes brimming with concern. You're leaving? Are you sure? Camille gently placed framed certificates and a few personal items into a box. "Yes, Nina, I need a fresh start." She offered a wavering smile. "Thank you for always having my back." Nina gave a quick hug, tears gathering. "I'm sorry it ended like this." Camille nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Me too." When she stepped out of Montgomery and Reed's doors for the last time, the sky threatened another downpour. A warm wind whipped around her, carrying scents of wet pavement and city fumes. She balanced the cardboard box in her arms, scanning the bustling street. I'm free now, no job, no marriage, no illusions left. The realization stung, but it also felt eerily liberating. As if on cue, raindrops began to fall, tapping against the box. She dug for her car keys, blinking away the moisture in her eyes. Whether tears or rain, she couldn't be sure. A swirl of neon from nearby signs glistened off the wet sidewalk. She thought of Evan, of the final divorce hearing looming, of how they'd hardly spoken since the courthouse. She thought of Sean, of how quickly he'd distanced himself once he got everything he wanted. And she thought of herself a woman who'd once believed she could have it all, now standing at ground zero. Clutching the box, Camille took a breath. For the first time in weeks, the quiet hum of possibility coursed beneath her heartache. She didn't know where she was headed, but anywhere was better than the trap she'd built around herself. She stepped into the rainy street, letting the droplets soak her hair and shoulders. A cathartic wave surged within her, as if the city rain were washing away remnants of old dreams. Time to rebuild, she told herself. Even if that meant starting from nothing, at least it would be on her own terms. The echo of keys jangling in the lock was unsettlingly loud in the hush of Camille's new apartment. She stepped inside, flicking on a lone overhead light that cast pale, uneven shadows across the sparse living room. Gone were the familiar couches, the framed photos of travels she and Evan once cherished. In their place lay unopened boxes and a single armchair she'd managed to pick up from a thrift store last week. Camille let out a slow breath, setting a small grocery bag on the kitchen counter. The fridge's hum was the only sound, no chattering TV, no half-finished manuscript strewn on the table. A pang of loneliness seized her. Though the divorce hadn't been fully finalized in court, she and Evan had already parted ways. He'd left the old townhouse, and she couldn't bear to stay there alone. This modest apartment was supposed to be a fresh start, but every bare wall reminded her of how abruptly she'd uprooted her life. She noticed a message on her phone, one from Dr. Cassandra Carter. The gentle therapist had been reaching out more often since the meltdown at the old job. "Hi, Camille. Just checking in. How are you holding up?" Camille typed a quick reply. "Trying my best. We can schedule another session soon." Then she glanced around at the boxes again, heart heavy. Tossing her jacket on the armchair, she wandered to the window. It overlooked a modest cityscape, blinking traffic lights, the faint glow of distant high-rises. The reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked older than she remembered, eyes shadowed by regret, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of her mistakes. "All right, let's do something," she thought, trying to summon some motivation. She rummaged through a box labeled kitchen, finding plates and a mug. A simple act, putting away dishes, became an effort in grounding herself. With each item she placed in cupboards, she tried to imagine a small piece of stability forming in this otherwise chaotic life. Later, she boiled water for instant noodles, her makeshift dinner. The steam fogged up her reflection in the window. As she ate, the taste of salt and cheap spices felt oddly comforting, a humble meal in a humble space. She recalled lavish lunches at Montgomery and Reed, the catered spreads for big cases. That feels like another lifetime, she mused. An ache stirred in her chest when she spotted an unopened envelope on the counter. She recognized the return address, a credit card company. Bills kept coming, even if her income had been abruptly cut off. She ran a hand through her hair, stress mounting. Yet beneath the anxiety, a flicker of determination sparked. She was still a lawyer she could rebuild. In a moment of self-awareness, she pulled out her phone again, flicking to Dr. Carter's number. She typed, "I'd like to meet sooner if you're free. Really need to talk." Then she set the phone aside, swallowing the knot in her throat. She couldn't unravel everything alone. She understood that now. Night settled deeper. After cleaning her makeshift dinner, Camille curled up on the armchair with a second-hand blanket, staring at the unopened boxes. The emptiness weighed on her, reminding her of all the times she took for granted even the simplest noises of domestic life. I wanted freedom, right? She thought bitterly. Well, here it is. A single tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. She brushed it away, forcing herself to breathe in, breathe out. Tomorrow was another day. She'd unpack a few boxes, maybe venture out for a job hunt, one step at a time. You can't give up now, she told herself, hugging the blanket tighter. Outside, a car engine revved, then faded. In the hush that followed, Camille let the quiet seep into her bones. She closed her eyes and allowed herself a small wish that this emptiness would one day feel less suffocating. Because for now, all she could do was endure it, hoping that in the stillness lay a path to something better. Do you mind reading that line again, with more tension in your voice? A young director called out, tapping a pencil against a script. The small community theater buzzed with quiet energy stage lights hung from a low ceiling, chairs arranged in half-circle rows for the actors. Evan Carrigan, clad in faded jeans and a gray sweater, stood near the center of the makeshift stage, script in hand. He cleared his throat, delivering the line once more with a palpable undercurrent of frustration. As he spoke, the director nodded, clearly satisfied. Around them, a few other actors murmured approval. Evan stepped back, exhaling. So this is what it feels like to direct my own words, he thought with a surge of excitement. He'd spent weeks rewriting his manuscript into a theatrical format, something he initially believed was impossible. But the heartbreak of his marriage and the anger from that betrayal had unleashed a raw creativity in him. He titled his new play, The Woman in the Cave, a symbolic reflection of the entrapment he'd felt both in life and in that final confrontation with Camille. Great job, Evan, the director Peyton Gray said, smiling widely. A slight woman with curly hair, Peyton had discovered Evan in a local writing workshop, intrigued by his raw scripts. Your dialogue has intensity. We'll polish the pacing and then do a full run-through next week. He nodded, lips quirking into a half-smile. Honestly, I didn't know if I could handle rewriting everything for the stage, but it feels right somehow. Peyton gave him a reassuring pat on the arm. Your story resonates. Once we finish blocking the scenes, I'm sure it'll captivate our audience. Evan couldn't help the flush of pride warming his cheeks. It had been so long since he'd felt validated. After the divorce proceedings started, he'd moved out, crashed on a friend's couch for a while, then found a modest studio. Much like Camille, he was piecing life back together, but here, among the dim lights and script pages, he felt a spark of hope. Let's take 5, everyone, Peyton announced to the small group of actors. They dispersed, grabbing water or chatting quietly. Evan slumped into a folding chair at the edge of the stage, wiping sweat from his forehead. It wasn't physically hot in the theater, but the emotional toll of hearing lines that mirrored his own heartbreak was intense. You okay? Peyton asked, settling beside him. Yeah, he said, voice soft. Just everything feels surreal. A few months ago, I was stuck in a failing marriage, no real direction. Now, he gestured around the tiny theater, overhead lights flickering. I have a chance to make something meaningful. Peyton's expression turned empathetic. Divorce is tough, but you're channeling it into your art. That's brave. He hesitated, thinking of Camille. His chest tightened at the memory of her dismissing his manuscripts, at the final confrontation when she admitted her affair. Pain mingled with a strange sense of liberation. It's the only way I know how to process everything, he said softly. Sometimes I'm furious, sometimes I'm numb. Writing this play, it's helped me face those emotions head-on. That's the beauty of theater, Peyton murmured. It's honest, raw, just like you said. She paused, then smiled gently. And if this production goes well, who knows? We might even take it on a small regional tour. Evan's eyes widened. I didn't realize you were thinking so big. She laughed, her curls bouncing. Dreaming is free, right? He couldn't help but grin back. Maybe this is the new path I needed. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. The actors trickled back, and Peyton hopped up to resume the rehearsal. Evan watched them bring his words to life, a sense of purpose igniting in his chest. Camille, he thought fleetingly. Would she even recognize this version of me, one who's actually making progress? He shoved the idea aside, focusing on the present. The next lines depicted a scene where the male protagonist found himself trapped in a metaphorical cave, confronted by a woman who tormented and challenged him. As the actors delivered the dialogue, Evan felt a twinge in his heart, recalling how Camille's frustration had once felt like a never-ending condemnation. Perhaps I needed that push, he admitted to himself. Let's run it from the top, Peyton called, voice echoing in the small theater. Evan cleared his thoughts, diving into the creative flow, because here, under the stage lights, was the only place he felt truly alive these days, free from the shadows of what once was, forging a new identity line by line, scene by scene. Camille brushed imaginary lint off her blazer, double-checking her reflection in the tiny mirror near the elevator. She was about to interview at a small, up-and-coming law firm called Gray and Rosen. It was nothing like the high-powered corridors of Montgomery and Reed, no soaring skyscraper or marble floors. Instead, the building was modest, the waiting area decorated with simple potted plants and motivational posters. A receptionist led her into a conference room with plain wooden chairs. Two partners, Mark Rosen and Eliza Gray, greeted her politely, scanning her resume. She recognized the curiosity in their eyes. They likely wondered why a former associate from a prestigious firm was sitting in their humble office. "How are you feeling today?" Eliza asked casually, setting Camille's resume aside. Camille forced a smile. "Nervous but optimistic." Mark nodded, leaning forward. "We see you spent several years at Montgomery and Reed. That's impressive." He paused, flipping a page. "Then you left rather abruptly?" A small knot formed in Camille's stomach. She'd rehearsed an answer for this. "Yes," she began, picking her words carefully. "I had personal circumstances that made it difficult to continue there. However, I remain deeply committed to legal work and believe my skills could be valuable to a growing firm like Gray and Rosen." Eliza exchanged a quick glance with Mark before addressing Camille. "We appreciate honesty. Our clientele is smaller, often local businesses or individual disputes. Would you be comfortable stepping into a more hands-on, community-focused role?" Camille exhaled, feeling a hint of relief. "This is exactly what I need: less corporate pressure, more human scale." "I believe so. In fact, I'd welcome the opportunity to build rapport with clients on a more personal level." They continued discussing her experience, her approach to case management. Camille brought up a few examples from her time at Montgomery and Reed, omitting, of course, the drama with Sean and Wellington. She sensed Mark and Eliza warming up to her, impressed by her organizational skills and strategic thinking. At one point, Eliza folded her hands. "We're looking for someone who can handle contract reviews, small litigation, maybe even set up workshops on legal basics for local entrepreneurs. Does that sound appealing?" Camille nodded earnestly. "Absolutely. I find the idea of tangible community impact fulfilling." She flashed a genuine smile, surprising even herself. Maybe this smaller stage is where I can truly breathe again. After nearly an hour of back and forth, Mark stood to shake her hand. "We have a few more candidates, but we'll be in touch soon." Leaving the office, Camille felt a breeze of cautious hope. It's not guaranteed, but it felt promising. She walked along the sidewalk, noticing a bakery across the street. On impulse, she bought a small cupcake, savoring the sweet frosting. A tiny celebration, even if it's premature, she thought. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She returned to her cramped apartment, rummaging through job boards just in case. Yet her mind kept drifting back to the interview. Gray and Rosen might not offer a six-figure salary, but it felt more humane, more real. And right now, authenticity was what she craved. That evening, she paused while unpacking a box of old photos. A snapshot of her and Evan at a beach years ago tumbled out, capturing them smiling, arms around each other. Her throat tightened. We really thought we had it all back then. She set the photo aside, forcing herself not to dwell on the could-have beens. Before bed, she flicked through social media, something she'd mostly avoided since the meltdown. A random local news headline caught her eye. "Small theater announces new play, The Woman in the Cave." Her heart gave a jolt. The article mentioned written by Evan Carrigan. He was apparently collaborating with a local director named Peyton Gray. Camille stared at the screen, heart pounding. So he's writing plays now. The accompanying photo showed Evan standing on a small stage, script in hand. He looked focused, maybe even content. The sting of regret pricked her chest, knowing he was thriving, while she was still picking up the pieces. She closed the app, setting her phone face down. I'm glad for him, she told herself, though tears rimmed her eyes, because deep down she couldn't ignore that tiny voice whispering, if only we'd found a way to support each other before it was too late. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through the blinds of Dr. Cassandra Carter's office as Camille settled into the familiar armchair. A scent of lavender wafted from a diffuser in the corner, lending a gentle calm to the space. Dr. Carter greeted her with a warm nod. How are you, Camille? Camille sighed, crossing her legs. Better than last time, I think. I moved into a small apartment. I've interviewed for a job at a smaller firm, and I'm stable at least. Stable is a good starting point, Dr. Carter replied, leaning forward. But your tone suggests something's still weighing on you. Camille paused, fiddling with the hem of her skirt. I found out Evan wrote a play, The Woman in the Cave. The name alone makes me uneasy. It sounds so symbolic. She forced a half smile. It's apparently doing well in a local theater. I saw a snippet in the paper. Ah, and how does that make you feel? A wry laugh escaped Camille. Everything, really. Happy for him because he's finally succeeding at something he loves. Guilty because we parted so badly. And maybe a little jealous, too. He found purpose while I'm still fumbling. Dr. Carter's gaze softened. It's natural to have mixed emotions. The guilt doesn't tie to your affair or to the overall collapse of your marriage. She swallowed, throat tight. Both. I keep replaying how I treated him, how we never truly talked about our problems until it was too late. Now I hear he's found his stride without me, and it hurts, but also it's a relief in a twisted way. Dr. Carter nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes seeing an ex-partner thrive can stir regrets. But it can also prompt us to reflect on what went wrong and what we truly want moving forward. Camille glanced at the soft glow of the corner lamp. Which brings me to something else. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. Not just from Evan, but forgiving myself. I don't know if that's possible. The therapist offered a kind smile. Forgiving yourself is often the hardest part, but it can be the most freeing. You've taken responsibility for your mistakes, maybe now it's time to allow yourself some compassion. Camille exhaled, a faint tremble in her fingers. I keep questioning if I should talk to Evan again. Not to patch things up, our marriage is beyond that. But just to apologize properly. Let him know I don't hate him, that I wish him well. Dr. Carter tapped a pen against her notepad, considering. That could be a step toward closure, but do it only if you're prepared for any reaction. He may still be angry or unwilling to speak. I know, Camille admitted softly. I'm not sure I'm ready yet, but the idea keeps nagging me, especially after hearing about his play. She pressed her lips together, recalling how the article praised Evan's honest portrayal of conflict and redemption. How ironic, she thought, that he'd found a creative outlet to process the very turmoil that sank them. The session wound down with Dr. Carter's gentle reassurance. Take your time. You're making progress finding a potential new job, settling into your own space. Don't rush a confrontation with Evan if your emotions still feel too raw. Camille nodded. Thank you. I'll think it over. That evening, back in her apartment, she fired up her laptop to scour job boards again. Halfway through, she paused, curiosity burning. She typed The Woman in the Cave local theater into the search bar. Instantly, articles and event pages popped up. One piece mentioned the show's strong reception and teased a limited extension of the run due to high interest. Camille's heart fluttered. She clicked through a gallery of photos. Evan standing backstage, Peyton speaking with cast members. One shot showed an excerpt from a scene, an actor playing a troubled man monologuing about feeling trapped, overshadowed by a domineering presence. She closed her eyes. It's about us, some version of us anyway. A lump rose in her throat. Suddenly, she recalled Dr. Carter's words about facing the pain to move on. Maybe I should see it. She shook her head, unsettled. Not yet. She needed more time, and perhaps that fateful day would come soon. For now, she minimized the browser, returning to a half-finished resume tweak. Her phone beeped a message from Gray and Rosen, requesting a second interview. Relief fluttered in her chest, an anchor in the swirl of emotions. Glancing once more at the article about Evan's play, Camille shut her laptop with a soft click. A quiet resolve settled in. She would confront her regrets, just not this second. Because in the stillness of her new life, she was finally learning that healing was a process, one step at a time. Cool evening air brushed against Camille's cheeks as she stepped onto the sidewalk outside the modest Maplewood Community Theater. The old brick building stood in a quieter part of town, far from the towering office blocks she used to frequent. A small marquee advertised The Woman in the Cave, with showtimes scrawled in neat lettering. She clutched her coat, heart hammering. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. For days, she'd wrestled with the choice to attend Evan's play, part curiosity, part guilt, and part inexplicable longing for closure. Tonight, she resolved to see for herself how he had transformed their fractured marriage into a piece of art. Inside, the lobby buzzed with murmured excitement. Attendees sipped coffee from paper cups, flipping through modest playbills. Camille purchased a ticket and edged toward an unassuming seat in the back row. She wanted to remain inconspicuous, her pulse thrumming at the idea that she might run into Evan or someone who recognized her. But the lights soon dimmed, and the hush of anticipation settled over the small audience. The stage lit up, revealing a minimal set, jagged foam walls painted to resemble the dark interior of a cave. A single lantern flickered near center stage, illuminating the male protagonist, a weary figure named Adrian, and a stern, aloof woman in tattered clothing, introduced only as the Woman. From the first lines, Camille felt a tremor in her chest. Adrian spoke about feeling trapped, about longing for freedom from burdens he couldn't name. The woman taunted him, forcing him to confront his insecurities, mocking his indecision, questioning whether he had the backbone to fight for his dreams. Camille's throat tightened with every sharp retort. That's me, she thought, tears prickling the corners of her eyes, or at least some distorted reflection of me. The dialogues were raw, stinging with the echoes of old fights she'd had with Evan. As the play progressed, Adrian recounted glimpses of a life outside the cave and unfulfilled passion, a partner who no longer believed in him. His anger and desperation collided with the woman's relentless critiques, culminating in emotional monologues about betrayal and self-worth. The parallels to Camille's own story were painfully clear. At the climax, Adrian realized the woman was a projection of his fears and resentments. To escape the cave, he had to reject her venomous words and reclaim his sense of purpose. When he finally stood up to the woman, she dissolved into shadows, the cave walls splitting open to reveal a wash of stage light. Camille clamped a hand over her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. The final lines about letting go of self-doubt to find freedom resonated so deeply it hurt. When the lights went black, thunderous applause erupted. Camille stood with the rest of the audience, clapping through her tears, her mind whirling. He turned our ugly, twisted downfall into something redemptive, something that, ironically, might heal others going through similar pain. The curtain call came, and the cast bowed. Then, at Peyton Gray's prompting, Evan stepped on stage. Camille's breath caught in her throat. He looked different, more confident, shoulders squared, a humble but proud smile lighting his face. The audience cheered as he joined the actors for a final bow. Camille sank into her seat, letting the wave of applause wash over her. He did it, she thought, her heart swelling with a bittersweet mix of admiration and regret. The crowd began filtering out, voices abuzz with praise. Swallowing her nerves, she dabbed her eyes with a tissue. She'd come here for answers for closure. Now she wasn't sure if seeing the play had brought her comfort or more guilt. Maybe both, she admitted. Part of her wanted to bolt out the door, bury her feelings. Another part insisted she stay, gather her courage, and try to speak to Evan. She rose slowly, waiting until the theater mostly emptied. A few stragglers lingered, some heading backstage to congratulate the cast. Camille took a trembling breath, hands clammy. If I don't do this now, I might never do it. Resolute, she edged toward a side door she guessed led behind the scenes, heart thudding in her chest. The backstage hallway was narrow, lit by a string of exposed bulbs. Shadows danced on the walls as stagehands and cast members bustled about exchanging hugs, high fives, and post-show excitement. Camille lingered near a stack of crates, trying not to draw attention. Voices echoed from around the corner. She recognized one. Evans. Her pulse quickened. She peeked across the crates and spotted him speaking with Peyton Gray, the director, who was beaming proudly. "That was incredible," Peyton told Evan, patting his shoulder. "Full house again. I think we can extend for another weekend." Evan smiled broadly, though he looked a little overwhelmed. "I can't believe how well it's been received. I was terrified people would find it too. Personal, I guess." Peyton shook her head. "Authenticity is what makes it resonate. You should be proud." As they talked, Camille studied Evan's posture, the easy confidence in his stance, the brightness in his eyes. He seemed genuinely happy, a stark contrast to the hunched figure she recalled from their final days together. Just then, a young woman carrying flowers approached, hugging Evan enthusiastically. Camille's stomach clenched. Does he have someone new? The woman praised the play, offering warm congratulations. Evan thanked her politely, but no spark indicated they were more than acquaintances. Still, jealousy and shame flickered within Camille. She realized she couldn't hide forever. Tensing her shoulders, she stepped forward, clearing her throat softly. "Even?" He turned at the sound of her voice, freezing for a moment. Their eyes locked his dark with surprise, hers brimming with an unspoken apology. Silence stretched, tension swirling in the small corridor. Peyton glanced between them, realization dawning. "I'll give you two a moment," she said, gently ushering the other woman away. Evan managed to speak first, voice guarded. "Camille, I didn't expect to see you here." He took a breath, scanning her face. The flicker of old pain and unresolved questions churned beneath the surface. She held her hands together, fighting the urge to tremble. "I know. I'm sorry to ambush you like this. I heard about the play, and I had to see it." Her gaze dropped, shame tightening her chest. It was beautiful. A swirl of emotions crossed Evan's features. "Thank you. So, you liked it then?" She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "It was raw and honest, and it reminded me of everything we went through. The fear, the anger, the regret." She swallowed hard. "I'm proud of you, Evan. You brought it to life." He exhaled slowly, as if wrestling with how to respond. "I appreciate that." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "You look different." "Are you okay?" Camille managed a shaky smile. "I'm still figuring things out. Life after leaving Montgomery and Reed, the divorce, everything. It's been tough, but I'm trying to move forward." Evan nodded, glancing away. "Yeah, me too." A beat of silence, thick and complicated. "Look, I have to thank the cast and greet some folks, but..." His eyes flickered uncertainly. "I guess we should talk, right? Really talk." She gave a small nod, relief laced with nerves. "I'd like that, if you're willing." He lifted a shoulder. "There's a late-night cafe a couple blocks away. Might be quieter. We can head there after I wrap up here." His tone was cautious, as though this invitation could crumble at any moment. "Sure," she murmured, nodding again. A swirl of apprehension and fragile hope pulsed through her veins. This is it, she thought. The chance to lay everything on the table, to face the consequences of her actions, to maybe find closure or forgiveness. They stood awkwardly for a moment, both grappling with old ghosts. Then Peyton called for Evan from across the backstage area, and he gave Camille a parting nod before stepping away. Left alone, she leaned against the wall, a tremor in her limbs. She felt like she'd leapt off a cliff, uncertain whether she'd land safely or crash. "At least we're talking," she reminded herself, tears gathering. That has to mean something. Outside, the muffled chatter of the exiting audience drifted in, echoing the swirl of emotions in her chest. A small neon sign illuminated the corner cafe, casting blues and pinks against the sidewalk. Camille and Evan sat at a secluded booth near the window, warm cups of chamomile tea steaming between them. The place was nearly empty, An echoing hush, broken only by faint jazz music from overhead speakers. Camille inhaled the fragrant steam, trying to steady the flutter in her chest. "Here we go." "So," she began softly, eyes flicking to meet his. "I'm sure this is awkward, but I'm glad you agreed to talk." Evan nodded, his gaze wary. "I figured we can't avoid it forever, especially now, with the play out there. It's weird to think you've seen it." He paused, a ghost of a smile. "I never expected you to show up." She offered a tiny shrug. "Part of me wanted to stay away, but I needed to see how you turned our mess into something so powerful." He traced the rim of his cup. "Writing that play was therapy in a way. It forced me to confront all the bitterness, the regrets." His voice caught slightly. "And I guess it helped me realize I could move on, or at least try." Camille's throat tightened. "I'm glad you found a way. I've been doing therapy too with Dr. Carter, trying to figure out who I am now that everything collapsed." Evan's brow creased. "So how are you holding up? Job situation? I heard you left Montgomery and Reed." She nodded. "I did. It felt suffocating. I'm interviewing at a smaller firm, Gray and Rosen. Less prestige, but maybe more heart." She sipped her tea. "My personal life's a mess, but I'm surviving." A soft silence settled. Then Camille took a shaky breath, diving into the hardest part. "Evan, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. For the way I belittled your writing, for how I cheated. I know there's no excuse, but I—" Her voice broke, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, feeling vulnerable under the cafe's neon glow. "I was drowning in ambition and frustration, and I took it out on you. I wish I'd realized how toxic I'd become before everything snapped." Evan's eyes flickered with pain, but not the raw fury she once feared. He fiddled with a napkin, sighing softly. "Camille, for a long time I hated you. Hated how you crushed my self-esteem. But eventually, I realized I played a part too. I leaned on you for validation, never stepping up to truly make a living. We both let our resentment fester." She nodded, tears blurring her vision. "I know. We failed each other in so many ways. Her voice trembled. "I never wanted to destroy what we had." His gaze softened, and he gave a weary half-smile. "I believe you. I also think maybe we needed that break, painful as it was. I found the courage to rewrite my life, ironically by rewriting our story on stage." He looked away, as though searching for the right words. "I'm not in love with you anymore, Camille. Too much damage was done. But I don't hate you either." The admission struck deep, both freeing and crushing. She clutched her cup, tears still threatening. "I understand," she whispered. "I wasn't expecting a fairy tale reconciliation. I just needed you to know I'm truly remorseful, that I wish you the best, wherever life takes you." Evan nodded slowly, sadness drifting in his eyes. "Thank you for saying that. We're different people now. Maybe we never really knew how to grow together, but that doesn't mean we can't part with some measure of peace." A tension lifted between them, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Outside, a car horn sounded faintly. Camille rubbed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "So where do we go from here?" He shrugged gently. "I guess we go forward separately, but maybe next time we cross paths, we can say hello without all the anger and heartbreak." Her lips curved into a watery smile. "I'd like that." They slipped into more casual conversation. He shared small anecdotes about the cast. She mentioned her new living space, their voices low and subdued. Finally, as the cafe approached closing time, they stood, the weight of an era concluding in that single moment. At the door, they exchanged a tentative embrace. Not romantic, not longing, just two people acknowledging they once shared a life. Then, with a final nod, Evan exited into the night, leaving Camille to stand under the neon sign, tears on her cheeks, yet an odd sense of relief lifting her heart. The following week, the sky glowed with a gentle sunrise as Camille drove along the quiet freeway. She was heading to Dr. Carter's office for what she hoped would be her final scheduled session. The city was bathed in early morning light, a soft promise of beginnings. In the waiting room, she flipped through a worn magazine, remembering the first time she'd sat here, tense and guarded, unwilling to admit her problems ran deeper than work stress. "I've come a long way," she reflected. The door opened, and Dr. Carter beckoned her inside with a warm smile. Taking her usual seat, Camille exhaled. "I met with Evan. We talked." Dr. Carter leaned in, eyes alight with interest. "That's a big step. How did it go?" Camille recounted the evening at the theater, the emotional punch of the woman in the cave, and the late-night cafe talk. Her voice trembled once or twice, but no fresh tears fell. "It hurt," she admitted quietly, "but it also felt like closure. We're not meant to be together anymore, but we're not enemies either." Dr. Carter nodded. "Sometimes acceptance is the best outcome after so much conflict. Do you feel at peace?" Camille paused. "More than I expected. I still regret what I did, but I'm not drowning in self-loathing. I see a path forward for both of us." They discussed her progress. She'd accepted an offer from Gray and Rosen starting the following Monday. She was tackling her finances, slowly paying off debts, and she was learning to be alone without feeling worthless. As the session wound down, Dr. Carter set aside her notepad. "Camille, I think you've done tremendous work. I'm here if you need ongoing support, but it sounds like you're ready to take the reins of your life with confidence." A gentle warmth spread through Camille. "Thank you. Honestly, I never thought I'd climb out of that hole I fell into. But I'm doing it, step by step." She rose to leave, and Dr. Carter offered a parting handshake. "Be well, Camille. And remember, forgiveness of yourself and others is a journey, not a destination." Outside, the sun had climbed higher, painting the streets in a bright, welcoming glow. Camille slid into her car, heart lighter than it had been in a long while. She decided to take the scenic route back to her apartment, rolling down the windows to let in the crisp air. As she drove, memories drifted past like ephemeral clouds. The frantic nights at Montgomery and Reed, the painful arguments with Evan, the moment she first crossed a line with Sean. Each recollection stung less now, like old bruises that had mostly healed. "I survived," she thought, "and I learned." She pulled over at a quiet overlook near the edge of town. From there, she could see distant rooftops and winding roads, the hum of life continuing below. Standing at the railing, she closed her eyes, breathing in the moment. I'm free, not from consequences she had faced those, but free from the prison of guilt and resentment that once trapped her. A soft breeze caught her hair, carrying the faint scent of pine. Camille smiled to herself, a genuine, unguarded smile. She thought of possibilities, a new career path that valued compassion over cutthroat ambition, a life where she wasn't defined by a failing marriage or corporate success. Perhaps she'd adopt a pet, or start volunteering small steps to build a more grounded existence. Reaching into her purse, she pulled out her phone and typed a message to Kristen. "Hey, thanks for everything. Let's grab coffee soon." Then, on impulse, she scrolled to Evan's contact, her finger hovering. She wasn't sure if she should text him yet. "No," she decided gently. "We've both said what needed saying. Maybe someday they'd share a polite update, but for now, silence felt right." Sliding the phone away, she gazed at the horizon. Warm sunlight bathed her face, and the wind whispered of second chances. Camille inhaled, letting gratitude replace regret. "I can't rewrite the past," she thought, "but I can shape the future." With a final, cleansing breath, she returned to her car, ready to drive onward, heart unburdened, eyes fixed on the road ahead.